ABC News with Jay Diamond.
The opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host only and the callers, not the views of WABC Radio and its management. The character voices you hear are those of Mr. Jay Diamond. Nobody raised hell when it was 1,800 murders a year, so all Dinkins has to do is get it below 1,800. Can we stop that music, please? I'll go back over this. Nobody raised hell when it was 1,800 murders a year. Nobody. So all Dinkins has to do is get it below 1,800, and you'll all tell him he's a great success. But listen to me, and listen to me very carefully. If you were a chronic criminal, if you were a bad person, would you amend your behavior because of this guy who runs away when you shake a fist at him? You'd jump all over him. If he were president, he'd have already granted amnesty to Iraq. Look at Phil Selig and his beleaguered corrections officers. Can you imagine that job? How would you like it? You spend your whole week with the accumulated scum of the earth, most of whom have weapons because of idiotic political hack magistrates who repeatedly erode the power of the police, not only to protect themselves, but to protect you, ladies and gentlemen. The corrections officers were forced to strike. Now listen to this. They were striking for the privilege of protecting themselves from the vermin that inhabit that viper's nest that they call Rikers Island. You see, they understood the mayor. They realized that he's easily bullied, that he's scared stiff of anyone who shows him anger, who makes a bad face to him. So they muscled him, and he characteristically caved in. He restored their powers of self-defense. Even more revealingly, he granted his usual amnesty to all the striking officers after he asserted with that glorious mock bravado that under no circumstances would he grant amnesty. So the corrections officers strong-armed the mayor into restoring their rightful powers of enforcement. And what happens? What happens? Well, predictably for this town of masochistic wimps, the ACLU enters the fray on behalf of the criminals, and yet another esteemed jurist, Mr. Morris E. Lasker, you think maybe a Carter appointee? Another esteemed jurist like that revokes the newly reinstated powers, and we're back to where we were. The inmates firmly in control of their guards, and of course, inevitably, in command of you too. For in New York City today, if you are not brutalized at home or in public, it's not because this administration has placed one impediment between your murderer and you. It's just that he hasn't found you yet. But don't worry. He's out there looking. And by the way, I'll bet most of you have forgotten the scene of Mr. Dinkins' very first appearance of his campaign. I mean the primary campaign against Ed Koch. It was in February 1989 that your mayor appropriately chose Rikers Island. That's right, he chose Rikers Island as the launching pad for his fantastic voyage. And on that great day, he told his constituency that, quote, they were the most important people in this city. They were the most important people in this city. Remember Stoney Harrison? He's the guy who murdered officers Gerzon and Williams. That was a few months later. But Stoney Harrison was a resident in that venerable institution that day, and I'm certain he took Dinkins' rhetorical majesty very much to heart. And if Officer Williams or Gerzon had been able to somehow disarm Stoney and finish him off, you know what would have come next. You do know. The officers would have been suspended pending investigation, and if the first grand jury refused to indict them, then your DA, who, by the way, runs unopposed in every election, if you've noticed, have you? That DA would have convened more grand juries until one did indict. You see, Robert Morgenthau, who inherited zillions from his father and lives an opulent life on an estate, wants you and the police dead. If you live or the police triumph, it shakes him up a little bit. You know, he gets disoriented. He's not used to it. It's not the script. Then he has to take Valium. So go quietly and don't get him nervous. Would you do me a favor? Have mercy. Just die without a whimper. By the way, the one time Junior Morgenthau dared to run against an actual opponent, if you remember, was 1962, and the opponent was Nelson Rockefeller, who kicked his scrawny... Well, he learned his lesson, and now he runs against no opposition. Now he's going after one Ken Mendoza, whose crime, listen carefully, whose crime was to save the life of his neighbor by shooting the intruder who was trying to kill her. You see, your DA would be more at ease if Ken Mendoza had wimped out, like most of us, if he had wimped out and allowed that beast to kill a pregnant woman. That's the script when you're a cipher living off a trust on a big farm a million miles from reality.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Diamond.
Will they knock off all those promos? All I get is orders. Don't imitate this guy. Then they play promos. I'm going to go to a phone call. Who is this? Hey, look, pal, it's a little early in the morning for a tequila sunrise. All right. Who is this, pal?
Hey, listen.
Is there some guy pulling some shtick?
Hey, Diamond.
Yeah.
Did you have to be that good? I don't mind being imitated.
What is this? What are you trying to imitate, Bob Grant?
Hey, listen, Diamond. I don't mind being imitated, but you have to be that good?
Hey, look. You called me, pal. You called me. I didn't call you. Hey, look. You called me. If you think I'm that good, I'll tell you what you can do. You can be a regular caller on this show, because it's obvious you can never get on the air yourself. Now, you do a pretty creditable imitation of Bob Grant, but you're not cutting it, pal.
Well, wait a minute. Who said I was imitating Bob Grant?
Wait a minute. Isn't that what you were trying to do?
I didn't say I was imitating Bob Grant.
You're right. All right. Why would I make that assumption?
Well, I don't know. Do I sound like him?
You sound exactly like him.
No, really, Jay.
You know something? I'm honored. I'm flabbergasted. I'm really nonplussed.
You know, Jay, I better sign a contract with you to make sure that I get at least 10% of everything from here on in, because you're my find. You're my protege, and you're too good.
You're selling yourself short, Bob, because
you are too
should
good.
get, if the truth is out, you should get 50%. I'm really thrilled that you called. And I really am. I'm nonplussed.
Well, that opening was
speechless.
vintage Bob Grant. I mean, that's the biggest compliment I can give you, Jay, is to tell you that opening was vintage Bob Grant.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know what? Someday you'll have to fill in for me, pal. You know something? I miss you. I mean it. Why, just yesterday, barely 18 hours ago, I was sitting here at your side, and we were laughing and having fun, and now you're coming through the ether. But what a thrill. Wait a second. You know something? I can't resist. I can't resist something. Do you realize that I'm fulfilling a fantasy, that everybody who's listened to you for 20 years in New York has had this fantasy, that you would be on the other end of the deal? Now, you're going to have to give me some special dispensation, because I have to do something to you. Bob, look. You know, you paid for this phone call. You are Bob Grant. I think this is an unprecedented moment in radio history, that a guy is sitting here in the studio and has Bob Grant on the phone with him at his mercy. So, Bob, look, take it like a man.
Okay, Jay, I know what's needed right here. I'll do it for you. Get off the phone, you creep, and don't you ever call Jay Diamond again.
Are you still there? You lived through it.
You know, it's interesting, but that last voice you just did, it sounded better than the other voices you've done. Now, you're right on target there. That beautiful opening on the almost mayor, or the new mayor. Very good, Jay.
Thank you, Bob. I'm grateful to you. And, you know, we had him up here yesterday. You remember, during your show, he stopped by. He was immaculate.
Yeah, play a little tape of what he said when he was on my show yesterday.
Well, don't go away, because at the 12 o'clock hour, he's going to be here, and he's going to take calls. Will you be able to listen?
He's going to take calls?
Yes, he's going to be here, and he's going to take calls.
What about El Supremo? Is he around?
Bob, as long as you're not on the grounds, I'll be on the grounds. My new contract with this station stipulates, here on in, I'm afraid to... I don't want to deal with you.
And by the way, Jay.
Yes?
On the Bob Grant Show, Monday.
Yes?
The real Ed Koch will will be my guest.
The real Ed Koch. Boy, oh boy, we better have the air conditioning on high that day.
I want you to be here at the studio. As a matter of fact, I like you on the set at all times, Jay, at all times.
I will be there at the appointed hour.
I'm not going to let you get back to doing the Jay Diamond Show. But, Jay, I wanted you to be good. But did you have to be that good?
Well, I had to be that good if I sit next to you for the last 6 months and absorb what I have in fact absorbed. And that's the truth.
You got it, Jay.
You are my adopted father.
Okay.
I'll see you Monday. All right. And that was Bob Grant, the real Bob Grant. Now, let's go to Ron on WABC. Ron, are you there?
Good morning.
Hiya, pal. You know something? I was hoping that you would call.
I am honored to be talking to my favorite radio personality, following a phone call from no less than Bob Grant. I mean, this is an honor.
Wasn't that histrionic?
I wanted to commend you on your last Saturday program.
Thanks, Ron.
When you issued a short phrase which speaks volume. You said might for right as well as for not just for wrong. And this is what I have really believed for a long time, that the last time that this phrase was taken seriously was approximately 340 A.D. when St. Constantine heard in his vision, in hoc signo vinces. That meant, with this sign you shall conquer. By that sign, I don't mean a purely religious one. I mean basically a rallying cry for righteous people who have had quite enough.
Well, I think you should tell the audience that Constantine was the man who brought Christianity to Rome. Is that right?
It wasn't just Christianity he brought. His mother had been a Christian clandestinely for a long time.
But he made it, yeah.
And he had been toying with the concept and wrestling with his belief of the old Roman gods, and finally this vision tilted the scales for him. And he met the pagan forces at the Malbian Bridge, and though outnumbered about 8-1, won one of the classic victories of ancient times. But this victory ended what really amounted to the first Holocaust. That is the one that started with the crucifixion in 33 A.D. and continued unabated for 300 years, from Britain all the way to the Black Sea. Children, men, women were thrown to the lions, impaled, crucified, and about the only place they could pray was in the foul graveyards and catacombs. This is analogous to where the righteous are prisoners in their homes and feel absolutely terrified today.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think this is primarily because we have adopted a secular ideology that says don't use words like right and wrong. Don't use words like criminal and illegal and villainy and blasphemy.
Carried on the ether of a popular culture that is decadent.
Exactly. Now, pretty soon, the people will have enough. If you want to see a true vision of what this kind of mayoral administration and this kind of magisterial judiciary can bring about, the June issue of Life magazine contains a pictorial article called Children of the Damned. This pictorial goes into an area of Philadelphia called Oz, because that's the only word that can describe what's in there. There is an illustration with an interview of a 32-year-old mother who is a heroin addict, and her 17-year-old son who lives with her and is a crack dealer and addict.
Simple subtraction will tell you how old the woman was when she conceived that child.
And these two individuals live in a rat-infested one-room tenement, and their two sources of incomes are selling the drugs, and they rent out their sofa to a 15-year-old crack-addicted hooker.
But those, yeah, I know, but those stories are repeated nationwide.
Yes.
What has done it? What did it? This happened in the course of maybe a generation and a half.
Well,
that's the mystery to me. See, what puzzles me is what changed, what happened.
The mileposts along this path of destruction. The saying that good intentions are the root of all evil. This holds true in this case. 1955 we began an institutional infantilism called rock and roll.
100. You're unbelievable. Listen, when
1955.
Now let me say something. I'm going to interrupt you. I would like, if you want, for you to leave your phone number.
Sure.
Because I want to talk to you more. I want to get to know you. I listen to you, and you know I'm one of your fans.
Okay.
I presided over your marathon.
Okay.
However, I want to talk because it's unbelievable. Now you've opened up a Pandora's box. I would actually have you in here in the studio to talk about rock and roll, which I think is the most pernicious junk ever foisted on the world. I mean that. I hate it.
Yeah, this is the signpost that put the wedge between parent and adolescent.
Do you remember the name of Michael Jackson's biggest album? Bad.
Yes.
Now that's hypnosis.
I would have called it worse.
You've had a generation of people who have literally been propagandized to think that bad is good.
And whatever society, through millions of years of trial and error, has created in the way of a norm, in the way of a societal convention to preserve society and its basic functions, all of these became targets for this institutionalized infantile rebellion. The next sign...
The fake revolt.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of self-induced psychotics who are acting out their aggressions toward their parents on society.
This was followed in the 60s by what I call the J.C. Penney's and Sears Roebuck hippiedom, in which people like Peter Max and Andy Warhol became really rich beneficiaries of a false pseudo-culture that never really existed. There were individuals who existed, but the culture itself primarily relied on money from God knows what sources from which to buy pre-faded jeans from Sears and Roebuck catalogs.
That's right.
I mean, give me a break.
Right. It's all an illusion. It's all phony. It's all meretricious. I'll give you a better example. Do you ever get into New York City?
No.
There are people here, 18 affectations on 2 feet. Men with earrings, men with ponytails, their jeans deliberately torn, deliberately sagging, looking as though they lie on the floor all night in a heap of rancid olive oil, getting ready to put them on in the morning.
But you know what?
It's self-conscious.
Yep.
Any outward appearance that's self-conscious is hooey.
You want to see these people break out into hives?
Yeah.
Show them a picture of a 1959 commercial that was entitled "The Family That Prays Together Stays Together," of an actual integral family.
Right.
That is the mother, father, and 2 youngsters leaving a church on Sunday morning after services, with the father carrying a.
They'll roll up into a puddle. They'll melt like the Wicked Witch. They can't stand it. They hate everything that's decent. It's an entire culture based on decadence and depravity. It's pernicious, and it's in the air. Now, we're going to go in about 20 seconds to a special network report on Iraq. So what I'd like you to do is to leave your number. I'm going to put you on hold and leave your home number with my producer in there.
Sure.
All right? Now, on our newsbreaker line, we have attorney Mel Sachs. If you recall my opening today, I talked about the case of Kenneth Mendoza, the Good Samaritan, who now finds himself indicted for murder. So we're going to go to Mel Sachs right now. Are you there, Mel?
Yes, good morning, Jay.
Hi, thanks for coming. Mel, why don't you tell the people what's going on with your client and what happened?
Kenneth Mendoza should be praised and not prosecuted. He's a 19-year-old man who heard screams of a neighbor, screams of terror. And what he did, he tried to get into her apartment. He living in the same building. He was unable to gain entry through the front door, so he went through an adjacent apartment onto the fire escape through the window. In the apartment, the woman was still screaming, and a man was holding a knife. This knife-wielding intruder came at him. He shot and fired and killed this man. Under the New York State law, he was acting in self-defense. He was justified. When one reasonably believes a deadly force is going to be used against another person or himself, he's entitled to do what he did. He was indicted for this crime, and now he's facing 25 years to life.
25 years to life.
That's right.
But There are real murderers around whom they can't even find.
Absolutely. There are thousands upon thousands of warrants out for known criminals who've committed crimes with ample evidence against them. And now Kenny Mendoza is being used as a doormat.
In other words, he's in trouble because, as good Samaritans normally do, they stay on the premises waiting for the police to arrive.
How many New Yorkers would have the courage to do what he did? How many New Yorkers would be willing to sacrifice their own lives for the life of another?
Well, Cleophas Wilson did it, and he ended up in jail, and Rodney Sumter did it, and they wanted to put him in jail.
Oh, yes. Rodney Sumter, who I also represented, how to fight for his life. He went before a grand jury. He was interrogated by the prosecutor. He answered all questions of the grand jurors, and fortunately they acted as the conscience of the community. And he was acquitted before that grand jury. Grand juries can be used as swords in the hands of prosecutors when they should be used as shields to protect and safeguard individuals like a Kenny Mendoza.
And these days, look, you might have been in bad shape even if the grand jury didn't hand out an indictment. As I said at the beginning of this show, if they didn't get an indictment the first time, they just do what they did. They'd pull a Getz on him. They'd bring back another grand jury.
Yes, grand juries are controlled by prosecutors. Grand juries are closed-door proceedings. A grand jury consists of 23 individuals. It's necessary to have 16 people there, and out of those 16 people, if 9 people vote for an indictment, that person is facing whatever crime the grand jury decides to indict them for. In regard to the grand jury procedure, a defense attorney is not entitled to be present. The prosecutor can present any evidence he or she desires to present, and the only time a defense attorney can be present, and it's in such a limited way, it's when your own client chooses to testify. However, you can't participate in the proceeding. You can't object. You can't speak to the grand jury. You can't ask your client any questions.
I know that. Mel, yes. Why is it, do you feel, and you've been in this for a while now, you defended Rodney Sumter.
Yes.
Why do you feel that the authorities in this city have such a special interest in incarcerating Good Samaritans? What are they afraid of?
Prosecutors have their own reasons. We've been told that all homicide cases are presented to grand juries, and they say, let the grand juries decide. When they say, let the grand juries decide, they're the one that's controlling the grand jury. And in this situation, this case was in fact presented to the grand jury. We don't know exactly what the grand jurors heard. If we would have had some notice, if we would have been given an opportunity to examine the evidence, to know the proof that was put before them, perhaps we could serve the best interests of the public by putting forth other proof. A grand jury can take someone by ambush because the person who's being tried before the grand jury doesn't know what's being presented.
No, I understand
This is the unfortunate aspect of the grand jury. In response to your question, Jay, the exact motivation for the prosecution to bring this charge is frankly unknown to me. It's clear and obvious that the prosecutor is doing everything to justify this indictment.
But
when we were in court yesterday, Jay, the prosecution brought certain evidence to the attention of the defense for the first time and before the chief judge, and also asked to have bail set in this case. However, chief judge rightfully decided that Kenneth Mendoza should not be held on bail, should be released.
Mel, I agree with you. Hold on a minute. I have to interrupt you. Mel, the question, I appreciate your elucidating the facts of this specific case to my audience, but I want to know why you feel, on a continuing basis, that prosecutors in New York City hound, harass, and make life miserable for people who protect other people. Why is it? It happens not only in this case, but it's repetitive. It's a prevailing philosophy. They want you to die, it seems. The logic of it evades me. Perhaps you can enlighten me.
It seems to me that prosecutors look at things from their own vantage point. And to me, their own vantage point is looking at things with blinders on. Here's someone like a Kenny Mendoza or anyone else who's involved in the death of another person. Consequently, it should be presented to the grand jury, and if a grand jury decides that there was a killing and doesn't have the opportunity to hear other evidence, then they'll bring that person to trial. A prosecutor does, in fact, have discretion. A prosecutor should use sound judgment.
That's
and
right.
Unfortunately, they don't.
Right. They don't have to present it to the grand
That's
jury.
right.
In other words,
Let me say this to you, Jay.
he is making a decision to bring this this evidence, whatever it is, to a grand jury. He could easily have just not done it.
And the decision is made based on the fact that there was a death. A death is tragic. There's no denying that. But there are reasons, and under our law, there are sound and just reasons for the killing of an individual. There's a section under our penal law, Section 35, which is called justification. And under a number of circumstances, one person is permitted to take the life of someone else.
Mel, I thank you. I've got to go now. Time is fleeting here, but we will talk again. Thanks for stopping by today.
Pleasure speaking to you, Jay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Now it's 10:43 on WABC. This is Jay Diamond, and we'll be right back. Let's say hello to Morty on WABC. Morty, this is Jay Diamond.
Yay! Hi, Jay. You want?
Morty, are you there?
Yes, I
Are we
am.
losing you?
I'm listening to you.
Oh,
Yes,
I thought
I
you
am,
had
pal.
something to say to me, Morty.
Yes, I just want, Jay,
Yes, Morty.
terrific.
Terrific?
Just terrific.
What's
Morty
that?
Storm said you're terrific. Everybody loves you. The way you're carrying the torch. Bob Grant carried the torch. You carry the torch for people that speak up for people that are defenseless, that ain't got nobody in their corner.
Hey, look, Morty, I'm carrying the torch, but I hope I'm not too close to the finish line, because I just got started in this business.
No, pal.
All right,
I'll tell
pal.
you what the people in the streets are. I'm a comedian, pal.
This, by the way, this man is not just a comedian. Morty, you're far too humble. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the great Morty Storm the Fourth. Or have you been corrected? Have you been fixed, altered to the third?
Yes.
Yes?
It's Morty Storm the Third, marked down from the fourth.
Marked down from the
And
fourth.
I want to tell you something. I want to tell you something. I'm listening to you, aside for your astute observations, for your prolific.
Prolific.
Is there a word like prolific?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think John Barrymore was prolific.
Yeah, we had a nice Roman nose, John, but had a good profile.
That's what I mean. Oh, it was profile. All right.
Anyway, so I start to say that the people don't know how funny you are. Now, you know, I work with Sinatra. I worked with Sammy Davis. I'm going to open in Atlantic City for Columbus Day with a guy named Johnny Russo.
You tell Frank he wants to come on the show here with me. Just give me 6 or 7 weeks' notice. He can come up.
You want to know something? Now, listen, you give me a note. When I work at the Claridge Columbus Day weekend, he'll be across the street at the Sands. You give me a note, and I'll hand it to him for you.
Hey, Morty, I've got you under my skin.
You want to?
I have got you deep in the heart of me.
You know what you sound like?
Who?
Rudy Valley.
Rudy Valley.
I'm just kidding. You want to?
Hello, everybody. This is Rudy Valley.
No, he had more nasality to
And
him.
you had to have like a megaphone.
Right.
You know, true like that. You want to hear some sad stories?
Yes.
I got some sad stories. I bought a shirt.
Yeah. That's pretty
I
sad.
bought a shirt.
You're right, Morty. That's very lachrymose indeed. You bought a shirt.
Lacrimona?
Lachrymose. Tearful. Melancholy.
Molly, I bought a shirt, put it on, almost strangled myself. Then I realized I put my head to the buttonhole. Last winter, I bought 4 snow tires, and they melted. I jumped the bed with my wife, said, Morty, we're married for 35 years, and you still satisfy me. I said, Bobby, I'm not doing nothing. She said, that's why I'm satisfied. I said, you want to hear another sad story? I'm afraid to fly on planes. So I took a train. You know what happened? The plane fell on the train. You want to hear a very sad story? I went to the dentist. He said, lie down. He said, could you take pain? I said, yes. So he punched me in the mouth. I was home watching TV. It said, if you're an ex-alcoholic or you need to drink desperately, call this number. It turned out to be a liquor store. You want to hear a very sad story? story. I will my body to science, and science is contesting the will. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something. When I was a baby, I was very mixed up. I was breastfed on falsies. A very sad story. You know, Jelly, my manager. Jelly's the guy with Sinatra.
Oh, you mean Jilly Rizzo?
That's right.
Hey, you're in with the big guys there.
Jelly, my manager. He's a nice guy, but he doesn't know what I do.
You must know Lou Talese, too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But Jelly's very good to me, Jelly. When I'm at the Claridge Columbus Day,
Yeah.
and Sinatra's at the I want you to come down to see me. I want you to come down to see me.